Hello everyone and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry, a fan channel where everything Dragalia Lost can be found. This video is going to contain my review of the latest summon showcase. It's another Gala Dragalia, this time around also featuring two brand new limited time Halloween adventures. So in addition to our new Gala, we also have Halloween Sylas and Halloween Laxi making their debut on this banner. And of course, who is our brand new Gala? Well, it's none other than Gala Chronos Nyx. Let's go ahead and hop over to the showcase page here so we can start getting into the review. But I have to say, this was quite a surprise and completely out of left field as far as Galas that I was expecting. Chronos Nyx, of course, is a dragon who featured prominently in the first anniversary raid event. But let's scroll through as we see Halloween Laxi, Halloween Sylas coming up, and then all the way at the bottom here, Chronos Nyx. But one thing I will say I appreciate is we've been saying for a while, the Dragalia Lost player base, that we don't necessarily need all these Gala dragons to be advertised in the main campaign and sort of shoehorned in to sell the Gala banner. Just give us a random Gala dragon and we'll be just as happy. It's mainly about the power level they bring and provide, and well, it looks like the devs may have been listening to some of that feedback because here we have Gala Chronos Nyx seemingly out of nowhere. You never know, the story chapter for this month is yet to release, so perhaps we've yet to just see this dragon make an appearance in the story, and he actually will. But for now, it just appears to be completely unrelated to the current happenings of the main campaign, and I think that's actually kind of cool. So we have Gala Chronos Nyx, we have Halloween Sylas, and finally Halloween Laxi. I think this is a very strong summon showcase. So we'll get into all the details as to why, but as for the question of whether or not you should summon on this, I do think you should. You also, remember, have some free daily 10-folds still left through the end of this showcase, and the day after this showcase should be when you have your free 100-fold summon. Last year, or earlier this year I should say, but in the previous year prior to this anniversary of the game, right? Around the half anniversary, we had our free daily 10-folds into a free 100-fold, and at that time, the free 100-fold was on a special showcase which had seasonal characters brought back for that showcase. So I think that the same may be true this time around. There's no indication so far of our past Halloween adventures being available. But what I think will happen is on November the 4th, once the showcase ends, we'll probably get another showcase with all sorts of past seasonal characters, Halloween included, and that will be the one where we get our free 100 summons on. At least that's my hope, because I think those seasonal showcases are actually really good for players who missed out, and it's a very good value showcase to get 100 free summons on compared to some of the alternatives. So that's kind of my expectation right now. The other expectation I want to set is October is the most generous month when playing Dragalia Lost for free resources like Wormite, summoning, etc. November tends to be the least. After the anniversary period, we do usually experience a drought, and so caution is advised, as once we head into December, then you have Dragon Yule alts, you have New Year's alts after that. Sometimes you might have some special kimono alts related to New Year's. Then you get into February with Valentine's Day, and before you know it, you're at the half anniversary. So just be aware that, yes, this is now going to be very different this next month as far as our free summoning currency, if past is precedent in this case. So we've been getting really spoiled with all the free summons. That's probably about to change, just to be frank. Having said that, I still think that this showcase is a high enough value that it could well be worth your time summoning here. And in particular, I think it shores up some of the deficiencies in many players' rosters that actually relate to some of my recommendations for dream summons or just some of the dragons that I consider to be among the best in the game. So let me give a brief rundown here before we get into every single character's kit. But I think Halloween Laxi, and then to a lesser extent Gala Chronos Nyx, are really what stand out to me here as being able to shore up a light team for many different players out there. with Halloween Sylas also being quite good, but a little bit more replaceable. So let's talk about that. Halloween Laxi, I think, is excellent as a flashburn enabler. One of the things I talked about in my Dream Summon recommendations is I considered Ilya to actually be a great Dream Summon for players who didn't have a source of flashburn because it's just such a useful affliction to have. It's essential for Master difficulty of Iblis. It's super helpful to take on Tartarus with a light element team, which will extend into the Legend difficulty of Tartarus if you haven't been able to beat that in solo yet. But not only does she flashburn, she also dispels, and this is shareable with a relatively low share skill cost, and it only takes up 5 shared skill points. This is probably going to be one of your best dispel options outside of Lapis in terms of the cost, the share point cost, and this one also causes flashburn, which is a great upside and something you might want on a shared skill to begin with. So I think this alone is enough to make Laxi quite lucrative, but then remember, she is a rapid fire style mana caster, which means she has great overdrive damage per second. She's great at shredding the overdrive bar. That's going to make her pretty good against Legend Tartarus in the Berserk phase. If you've been struggling with that, this is potentially an opportunity to now bring a rapid fire style mana caster to quickly break Tartarus repeatedly. And there are some limitations to her, which we'll get into, but I still think that that alone is quite useful. And now here's another piece to her kit, right? This Chain Co ability, combo equals critical rate 5, is actually a very good Chain Co ability. And it's one of the things that makes characters like Kimono Elisan quite strong in their respective element. Kimono Elisan, of course, has some other Nihility-proof buffs, but the big thing about this Chain Co ability is it is not affected by Curse of Nihility, so this is a really good backline option in Sinister Dominion content as well. So I just want to put all that out there. I know Lilith isn't the fight that a lot of players are necessarily stuck on these days, but even against Lilith, I would expect Halloween Laxi to be a great teammate, and I think where she'll shine the most, of course, is going to be against Tartarus, especially on the Legend difficulty. But these are things that are not easy to get. You know, that overdrive shred, yes, there are a lot of swords that are good in the light element, but there's no other rapid fire mana caster like this. And also the flashburn, the dispel combination, it's very good. I think it's also good enough to use in co-op where you need a lot of dispel as well. So let's move on. I'm going to skip over Sylas for now. The reason that I think Gala Chronos Nyx is quite strong here is there just aren't that many great light dragons. When you compare, let's say, Shadow to Light, Shadow just has an embarrassment of riches as far as its dragons go. Even older dragons that don't hold up anymore like Fatalis, they're still pretty good. They're still relatively good dragons. Shinobi, not a bad dragon. Light never got a skill damage dragon quite like that. And then on top of it, you have these new age, super strong dragons, right? Chthonius just got a 5th Unbind. Not a bad candidate anymore. It's actually kind of good with the Start of Quest buff if your battle is short enough. We have High Chthonius, who has an invisible HP buff, and for transforming characters, it's a very strong dragon. Arsene, incredible nuke potential off the skill, great at boosting skill damage. Gala Cat Sith, not the best, obviously not good in Curse of Nihility, but still good against Berserk or Legend Kaiyan even. And then you have other dragons beyond this. Gala Bahamut, a recent addition, excellent dragon. Gala Reborn Nidhogg. So Shadow's very deep, all that to say, Shadow is very deep. Light, you're pretty much looking at Gala Reborn Jeanne d'Arc as the best light dragon, with Gala Thor also good against Tartarus for certain characters, but completely bad in Curse of Nihility content, like the Sinister Dominion. And then you have Daiko Kuten, who can work, depending on the adventurer, he's okay. His buff zone's good. For dragon transformation strategies, he's pretty good, but may not be available because he's seasonal. The other two I just mentioned are Gala as well. And then you have, I think from there, maybe the Summer Cat Sith, depending on your roster with flashburn access or not. You have like Pecorine for a weaker strength dragon. Of course, Cupid did recently get an upgrade, and Cupid's pretty good, one of the better light, pure strength dragons now. But even Cupid, at the beginning of fights, is going to be, 95% strength. It's less than this. And so I think that this is basically now the second best dragon after Gala Reborn Jeanne d'Arc. And if you have Peony, it's close, but Gala Reborn Jeanne d'Arc still comes out slightly better, assuming full uptime on her 30% elemental modifier bonus, but it's very close to where, depending on the dragon form on Chronos Nyx and how good Chronos Nyx is when shapeshifted, this could just be right up there neck and neck. So, and also another thing to consider is there are benefits to having a high strength stat compared to funneling some of that into the elemental modifier bracket. Strength affects things like your overdamage ticks, it affects your heal ticks, right? So having this piled into strength isn't necessarily a bad thing. It makes the size, it makes multiplicative strength buffs you receive in battle even better. And then you just have this skill, which is just 3,500 damage, right? That's also quite strong. That's a better mod than Arsene, who's used for nuke strategies, albeit with Arsene you just need to roll a crit on one hit for that supreme damage. So overall, I think that Gala Chronos Nyx could be a very significant upgrade depending on what other light dragons you have. Gala Reborn Jeanne, you know, it's close, but I would still say she's better because of her max HP buff. She has long skill animations, which actually can help with like tanking things, like blocking some bleed arrows, let's say. So I wouldn't say that's necessarily always a negative. And but yeah, I think this is the second best light dragon here, and very close competition for the first. So overall, I think these are already reasons to summon. Light is a hard element to produce a very powerful team in. I found that the solo content for light element is the most challenging. I'm often relying on the most Gala adventures, the most limited dragons and backline characters. So I think an opportunity like this to invest into your light teams is actually quite good. And then let's come to Sylas here. Sylas also has a lot positive going on between Poison Enabler, Shadow Blight Enabler, Dispel, including a double Dispel possibility, Max HP buff, light resistance increase, damage taken reduction. Exactly where I see Sylas fitting in for right now is basically as an alternative if you don't have Vania, and possibly a superior alternative for Vania in auto compositions of Expert Asura. I think Sylas will very naturally slot in there. And beyond that, it seems like Sylas will probably just also be a pretty good, albeit a little bit defensive, adventurer. So that's kind of my overall take on the showcase. Obviously, we got into some of the characters, but I think it's a very strong one. I mean, just looking at it on paper here, I know there's an allure to seasonal showcases because these adventurers won't be back until the next time we have them on some kind of Halloween banner or a rerun like the one we got around the half anniversary that may not happen for 6 months. So there's a certain allure there, but I think beyond that, just reading through the kits, it's actually just a very good summon showcase. I think they are legitimately good, especially in contrast to last year's Halloween where Akasha, sure, she's good, but was never really exceptional or super necessary for any content. Knock on wood, as starter releases tomorrow, right? And Halloween Melsa, even more so, really just never saw a lot of use at all. So, love Halloween Melsa, but she just never saw a lot of use at all. So I think that compared to last year's Halloween, this actually looks super stacked. And combined with a good Gala Dragon on this showcase, your 6% appearance rates, it seems like a great opportunity to summon. So that's my plan. I want to get everything on this showcase. Might have to spend some diamantium to do so, but we'll see how the summoning goes. Anyway, that was a lot of preamble, so let's get into the kits a little bit more formally and read through them here. Starting with Halloween Laxi, is there any special meaning to tricks and pranks? Love the outfit that she has here. I think this is a super cool alt for her, and I like that we're getting some development for her independent of Mascula. Maybe we'll see a separate Mascula alt in the future as well. So of course, Laxi received this costume when performing in a play and is now using it for Halloween. After the prince told her pranking was part of the fun of Halloween, she began to take a great interest in the subject. Of course she did, and let's read her skills. We talked a little bit about Trick 00 Ghost Fig, This deals damage to the target and nearby enemies, dispels one buff from each of them, and inflicts flashburn. Just as a flashburn enabler, a dispel shared skill, I think this is a good skill. It's kind of similar to Lapis, I think, in that you may only want to actually be using this either for the dispel or for the flashburn in her case, and not necessarily spamming it all the time. I think, as with most rapid fire mana casters, you're going to want to use her Force Strike most of the time, although with Laxi in particular, there's a special gimmick around that which we'll get into. Her second skill, Trick 99 Clockwork, deals damage to surrounding enemies and grants the user a defense amp and partially fills the clockwork gauge. This skill will deal extra damage and fill more of the clockwork gauge based on the combo count. Alright, so this one I do think you want to use on cooldown to get defense amps, fill your gauge, and then if you have a high combo count, deal extra damage and get more gauge back. So when you read through this, of course, her team amp max level being 3 is good. In the light element, I'm trying to think of who brings defense amps in the light element, and I can't remember off the top of my head if Farron does that, and if there are other characters who do that. The defense amps are a little bit spread out across elements, with none, I think, having a particular monopoly on them just yet. But Water recently got several opportunities to get them with Regina and Sandalphon, so I'm not sure who else has this in light, but as a standalone, that's fine, that's well and good. I would say this is not even needed to make Laxi quite a powerful character, but it's good that she has it. As far as the damage modifier, well, you do get plus 40% damage if you have 100 hit count, and rapid fire mana casters can easily achieve that high of a hit count. And then you also gain more gauge based on your combo count, up to the point that if you have 100 hit count, you could get 100% of your gauge back. That's actually going to be super important as we continue reading here, but needless to say, this is one I do think you use on cooldown. The damage modifier after the plus 40%, I think it's going to be solid. It doesn't look as good as, at a glance, if my memory serves, as Lapis's second skill, which is actually used for burst damage, but this one looks pretty good too. Okay, so co-ability gauge accelerator plus 20%. I talked a little bit about why this combo equals critical rate 5 is good. It works in Cursive and ALT. It also has a higher ceiling, since it can stack up to 20 times, than a regular critical rate co-ability. So this chain co-ability in the light element's actually strong, and you need powerful chain co-abilities or co-abilities to compete in the light element. If you're talking about things like co-op play, I'm not sure this would necessarily break in for co-op, because light has some really good backline options like Peony, but it may get there. It may be good enough, and in solo, certainly going to be a nice contribution. Alright, so Clockwork Creature 2, her first ability, is the reason why you're going to want to be using her second skill to refill your Clockwork gauge. The way that Laxi works is sort of like she has to wind up before she starts her Gatling gun attack that's all rapid fire mana casters have. So she has a Clockwork gauge that starts off completely filled, and after it's filled, it starts depleting while you're using Force Strikes. However, it gives you the following bonuses until it's completely depleted. Damage dealt by Force Strikes up by 10%. The rate that Force Strike decrease the mode gauge is sped up, so that means you're shredding overdrive even faster. Force Strike attack rate is increased by 12%, so your animations on your Force Strike should be even better. And movement speed during Force Strikes is increased, so she's basically playing with turbo mode on top of being a rapid fire mana caster. And they're already quite good to play with their Force Strike option. The mobility isn't too bad. You are slower normally. With her, I expect this to be extremely quick and to be pretty fun to play. But the downside is, when your Clockwork gauge is depleted, it will gradually fill automatically, but you won't be able to use Force Strikes until it fills up. So once you run out of ammo, so to speak, and you've completely drained your gauge, you're going to be locked out of Force Strikes for a while, which is the bread and butter of a rapid fire style mana caster. So at that point, you have to, hopefully you have 100 hit count already. You can use the skill. If not, hopefully you have a high enough hit count that you use Trick 99 Clockwork and immediately ready up your gauge, and then you can start your force striking again. I think it would be ideal if you're able to get over this with some amount of leeway, and then you can pop this off just as your gauge is about to go down to 0. That might end up being her best sequencing. But overall, it's going to depend how long this lasts. Like, if you can only get off 15 hits and it's depleted, obviously that's not going to be very good. But I would expect it to be somewhere in the vicinity of 100. That's my expectation and hope. Like, otherwise, I think it's just not that realistic that you're achieving a 100-hit combo all that often. I think it might be tight and reward skilled play, but I think you'll be able to basically cycle between running down her gauge, using her second skill, running down her gauge again. That's my expectation, but that's going to require some playtesting to determine. Alright, and then finally she has Curse Res 100% and Flashburn Frenzy 2. This extends the window between hitting an enemy and the combo counter resetting by 0.5 seconds. Okay, so that's going to give her a little bit of flexibility. Actually, it's more than it seems. That any type of combo time usually ends up feeling surprisingly good. In particular for rapid fire style mana casters, whenever you're revving up your combo, you're starting to force strike, that charge at the very beginning, that's the one that can feel a little bit on the slower side. So this might be a way for her to segue between, let's say, using her second skill and then starting up her force strike and keep her combo up. Reading on though, this also increases the user's chances of inflicting Flashburn by 25% for every 15-hit combo, up to 3 times per combo, and grants the user a stack of the Flashburn Trickster effect each time they inflict Flashburn, up to 3 times per combo. Flashburn Trickster increases damage to Flashburn enemies by 7%. The buffs are removed when the combo counter resets. So it has a unique name. It's not clear just based on reading this whether or not that will mean it works against Cursive Nihility, but I think there's probably a good chance that it does, as a way to incentivize summoning for this unit. And also, most characters released since Cursive Nihility was introduced, they've been pretty generous with making their unique buffs and mechanics actually function. So I do think this will probably function, but she doesn't necessarily even need it, to be honest, to be good. But this would be even more DPS potential for her with a built-in Punisher effect against Flashburn. Or maybe even this would count as a killer effect, as it were, since it's a visible buff as opposed to like a passive bracket on extra damage to Flashburn. Not sure. But either way, pretty good bonus upside to have. So overall, I think that Halloween Laxi is really strong. Like I said at the onset, I think that Legend Tartarus would be a great playground for her if it's something you've been struggling with. I do think it's one of the harder Legend fights and requires a lot of coordination. She seems like she's really well suited. I could also see her with her rapid fire style with access to dispel, getting through the portals really quickly, regardless of which portal she's assigned to, which could help with some of the coordination issues. She does only have Curse Res here, but Vixel can cleanse Poison now. I think there are enough workarounds at this point, especially with more Syndom prints coming, that you can get your Affliction Res right if you need to. Overall, I feel like she's a very powerful adventurer, so we'll see how it actually plays out once people have her in their hands, but I think she's a good reason to summon here. Okay, so let's move on and talk about Halloween Sylas. As the aromas of Halloween fill the air, I must work miracles. He's a support unit, a shadow bow, and it says Sylas received this costume when performing in a play and is now using it for Halloween, but rumors have spread about how difficult he is to trick, mostly because he spent his childhood putting up with his friends' pranks. And right, I should comment on the portrait here, of course, with the background artwork, as it were. Who do we have lying on the table here? It's obviously one of the androids, and then Lara Noah in the background. No sign of Luca, as far as I can tell in this portrait, but it feels like he must be afoot, ready to spring a prank. And Sylas is kind of a doctor, fits with sort of him being an alchemist before, or at least a potions expert, Ayurvedic expert as it were, knowing the natural remedies of the woods. I also think he has glasses, right? Am I losing it? It's a little bit hard for me to see whether this is like part of his hair or his glasses, but I'm pretty sure he has glasses in this portrait. And overall, Sylas fans, probably a lot to be excited about with this one. Okay, so skills are Surgical Trick, which is shareable with a share point cost of 7. This deals damage to enemies in a line, inflicts poison, and dispels 1 buff. If it's used when you have a combo sample, a strike sample, and a dash sample, all 3 are consumed, and you do an additional attack that deals damage, dispels a buff, and causes Shadow Blight. So if you have these samples, we'll talk about those momentarily, but if you have the samples, you get 2 dispels off of this. You get poison, you get Shadow Blight, and you deal more damage when you have the samples as well. So this is actually pretty good. The opportunity to dispel on a first skill is kind of nice. It's a reason that, well, it's really useful in the shadow element. It's a reason that characters like Alberius, to some extent, are quite good, or at least feel very good to play. Dispel is a little bit more circulated in shadow than it is in some other elements like water, but it feels good to play in the sense that you never feel as stuck or trapped when you're battling Kaiyan specifically. Dispel being such an essential piece of that. If you're missing some of the infinite dispel options like Belina or Grace or Joker, it's nice to have a dispel on your first skill. It feels like you have an element of safety, and of course Alberius has it on both. There are a lot of characters who have dispel nowadays though, so you have your Dragon Yule Victors. Gala Zethia didn't have it from what I remember, so that would be one more recent character doesn't have it. Summer Verica doesn't have dispel, so maybe this is your first dispel enabler, depending on who you have in your shadow pool. And the poison and Shadow Blight is nice. Not effective poison in a vacuum against Asura, but with some poison res reduction, it can be made to be effective. Shadow Blight is pretty effective. Or is it? I'm trying to think about the different difficulties. I'm not sure on that, actually. It's been effective in my manual clears. I don't know if Azura starts off with high Shadow Blight res or not, so I apologize for not knowing on that, but poison res for sure starts out high. So let's keep reading on and go to the second skill here. Aromatic Treat applies one of the following at random to each member of the entire team. Max HP is increased, okay, that's good. Blight res is increased, that's fine. Damage taken is reduced, that's also fine. So you get one of those at random, and also occasionally grants all of the above bonuses at the same time and removes all afflictions. So a lot of players, Sandalphon seemed like the first universal affliction cleanse. I think that Sylas, didn't OG Sylas have that before she did on Inspiriting Scent? I'm not sure, but it was either afflictions or debuffs that he had. And that seems to have carried over in spirit to Aromatic Treat here on Halloween Sylas. Really similar type of feel to regular Sylas' second skill, sort of a sense that you're maybe using these potions or concoctions at random, so you never know what you're going to get. But the great thing in this case is there's consistency. All of these things are survival related. So that is why I think that the way that Halloween Sylas is likely to be used is for auto battle purposes. That's where survival tends to matter the most, and there are proven strategies with Vania for her max HP buff to auto expert Asura, and I could very easily see Sylas fitting into that slot. So if you have a combo strike and dash sample, it grants all of the above bonuses and removes all afflictions, but it consumes all 3 effects. And when it says it consumes the effects there, it doesn't mean the 3 buffs. That's how I first read it. It means it consumes the samples that you have. So you do get all the effects legitimately. The thing about this compared to the original Sylas is the skill energy, the SP cost on this is very low at only 6,000. The original was like 11k, I want to say, a little bit over that even. The special effects are HP plus 15%, so with only 2 rounds of that, you hit the cap or the maximum on HP buffs. The maximum is plus 30%. That's very good for survival purposes. 10% damage reduction, which lasts 20 seconds, and 20% light res, which lasts 10 seconds, and then your affliction recovery of all afflictions. So very defensive, but I think has a lot of potential to be quite good. And let's read on. The co-ability is nothing too special, but it's your standard skill haste that you find on bows. The chain co-ability gives you some regen at lower HP. Another thing that could potentially help with autos, with survival, but not necessarily especially important. And then here we go with the abilities. We'll start with the first one, I guess. This is a longer one, but it explains what the samples do. So Dark Experiment 2 allows the user to carry out dash attacks by tapping on the screen during a dodge, and increases the damage dealt by dash attacks by 200%. So Sylas has a unique dash move. If this dash attack is followed immediately by a standard attack, your combo begins, your standard one, with the second attack in the standard chain. Also, you get a combo sample when you execute the fifth attack in your standard chain and it connects with enemies. You get a strike sample when your fourth strike connects with enemies, and you get a dash sample when your dash attack connects with enemies. So they're named appropriately. These special samples you collect by doing different types of moves on your foes. So you're going to want to mix in some dash attacks, some force strikes, and some standard combos. With a bow, you can roll and force strike usually. In Sylas's case, I guess he can roll into a dash attack into a standard combo, starting with the second attack of that combo. So maybe the force strike will be the trickiest bit to actually incorporate. Maybe he'll also have a slightly different force strike style, although nothing here seems to indicate that just yet. Anyway, when the user has all three, the first and second skills are powered up, and using one of those consumes all three effects, and we already read what those power-ups are. So on skill 1, it's the additional dispel, additional damage, and shadow blight, and on skill 2, it's the fact that you get all three bonuses at once. So this is something that I wonder how the AI will behave. I would imagine that the AI is going to do all three of these things, but a normal bow AI will start force striking a lot more when the enemy's in overdrive. So I'm not sure exactly how Sylas is going to play. The normal AI also has like a special saving roll that they do against red AoEs that dodges damage. I don't know if Sylas is still going to have that, and it's just that he can also spin off an attack from it, or if he's actually going to have to do like a regular roll instead of having the special Supreme AI roll. A little bit hard to say at a glance, but that's not all from this ability. In addition, you also get an extra 30% strength when your HP is 70% or above. What the heck? You just get so much extra strength. This actually reminds me, I think the original Sylas also had an HP 70% threshold for a strength bonus, but 30%? That seems like a lot of extra strength, right? Yeah, that feels like a lot. 13%, that might be a little bit more normal. 30%? All you have to do is stay healthy and you have ways of mitigating damage? Are the modifiers here built around this? Maybe. Maybe that's what it is, but sheesh, that's a lot of strength for a relatively easy to meet condition, so that seems like a pretty good passive. And then blindness res 100%. It's not paralysis res, so it's a little riskier against Asura, let's say, or even Kayan. Although I guess against Kayan this is better, because ranged units will tend to just stand and get blinded, and it's not great for their damage output. But it doesn't matter too much, I should say, because you can cleanse all afflictions. So if you get paralyzed, there's a chance Sylas will be able to heal himself. Maybe also if you're playing Asura, maybe you have Sandalphon on the team, cleanses that paralysis. She's been effective in that role. Or maybe you just have like a Summer Verica that can just power heal through paralysis ticks. I don't think it's really too big of a deal having blindness res. And then Forbidden Procedure 2, the final ability here, and this is another long one. Dispelling an enemy buff or barrier or using aromatic treat activates the following effects. So using your second skill, or when you actually get a dispel off with your first skill, then you get the following effects. Does it say one of the following or all of the following? It just says you get the following effects, so let's see. 20% is added to the modifier applied to damage against light attuned enemies for 30 seconds. This increase will not stack. Okay, that's a pretty significant damage increase. That's like a free co-ability in your back line. The user is granted a defense amp with a maximum team amp level of 2. After this is granted, it won't grant it again for 10 seconds. Alright, sure, another defense amp opportunity. The skill gauges for the user's first and second skills are filled by 15% after activating, won't activate again for 10 seconds. Okay, I mean, yes, why not? And then also, dispelling an enemy buff or barrier applies adaptive suppression that lowers the modifier applied to the target's affected damage by 15% for 10 seconds. This debuff won't stack. This just seems ridiculous to me. I wonder if we've moved into a new age of Dragalia Lost, or if the units lately have just been super powerful. Because we had Basilius, we had Sandalphon, that were really good, but also on the Yu-Gi-Oh side as far as their kits. This is, do you get all three of these? The way I'm reading this, it just says activates the following effects, plural. So it makes it seem like you maybe get all three, but I feel like what's meant is maybe you get one at random. I don't know, it seems like a little bit too good. Even as a Shadow Bow, which isn't like a premium, weapon type for your damage usually, Halloween Sylas, between everything, it just seems like they crammed so much in here that I start to wonder, with 20% modifier and 30% just pure strength, like maybe he's just going to be a good DPS in addition to having lots of survival elements, right? Like extra 15% charge is going to help him survive, cast his second skill more often. Defense amps is going to help with survival. The strength suppression is going to help with survival. So there's a lot of good elements here that I could see definitely helping to auto Asura, but it is one of the ones where you can use off element. You could use Formal Noel, Sandalphon, Gala Mascula, so it's a little bit more well-tread ground at this point. And maybe the deeper use here is going to be against Surtur, Phase 2 of Master. That is going to drop tomorrow, so we'll know very soon how Halloween Sylas does there. Overall, he seems like a powerful adventurer. Maybe want to underestimate it a little bit. The thing is, I think Kayan is just on the easier side compared to Tartarus on the legend difficulty, and so I feel like more of the emphasis with Sylas would be toward the Sinister Dominion, and Asura, there are other ways to auto it. So that's why I still feel like Laxi is the premier pull from the showcase, but Sylas still seems to be really strong too. Okay, and that brings us at long last back to Gala Chronos Nyx with the pose here, right? With the pose, with the various forms, of course. My time is without bound. A dragon who comes here from another world and wields the power to manipulate time. He refers to the prince as my liege and seems cooperative, but his true master is located in another world. Who could that person be? We've already said quite a bit on Gala Chronos Nyx at the onset, so I'll only repeat a couple things that I said there. The strength 100%, it's generally going to be a little bit worse than Gala Reborn's Jeanne d'Arc, assuming you're able to get her elemental bonus up with full uptime. She's going to be a little bit better even if you have Peony and you have and you're facing against a shadow enemy. So she's going to be a little bit better than 100% strength. However, 100% strength, it's going to increase your overdamage ticks. It's going to increase your healing if you're a healer. It's also going to make it so that strength buffs you receive are a little bit better because you have a higher base strength stat. And of course, when I'm comparing the two of them, I'm thinking as far as, 20% flurry strength print, so maxing out on your strength via worm prints already. So there are diminishing returns to having this much strength, and Gala Reborn Jeanne d'Arc's probably a better dragon, blind of what Chronos Nyx's dragon form and basic combos look like. The Dimensional Oblivion skill, despite just being a damage dealing skill, has such a high modifier that seems to have a lot of potential. And then Time's Transcendence too honestly reads like a little bit of a drawback. You do get a Dragon Strike, which is kind of like a Dragon Force Strike. It deals damage and you can charge it, but when you're shapeshifted, remaining time is depleted by standard attacks, by Dragon Strikes, and by skills, instead of being depleted automatically over time. So you're using up your time when you're doing these things. So that, I don't know if it's a good thing or not. I guess maybe you could stay in your dragon form longer and maybe use it to tank, but I don't know, would that deplete your gauge? In addition, if the user is able to dodge when they're hit by an attack, they will consume some of their remaining shapeshift time and automatically dodge the attack. Some attacks cannot be dodged. So for the ones that can't, I wonder how that's going to work, but I guess that sort of answers a little bit of that question. Chronos Nyx seems like a very good dragon. Light is an element where even if you have Gala Reborn Jeanne d'Arc and no other great light dragon, like it might still be worth it to have another good light dragon for a secondary light DPS for solo play. So I still think that there's a lot of appeal here, even for somebody like me that has Reborn Jean, Daikokuten, and Gale Thor. Overall, Chronos Nyx looks to be quite a powerful, if a little bit basic dragon. The dragon form, which we have yet to see, is going to probably tell the full story as to whether he's then used alongside Gala Yuden, or just some of the more shapeshift-centered strategies in the light element, maybe Gala Luca even. So we'll see exactly how good he is in practice, but on paper, one of the best light dragons for sure. Alright everybody, and that is going to do it for my review of this summon showcase. We went over 40 minutes once again, but hopefully you were able to get the answer of whether or not you wanted to summon toward the beginning of this video. This was a fun one though. It's been a while since I posted. It feels like all the Dragalia Lost content drops at once. We have this banner, we have the new event, we have the end of the Platinums, and we also have Surtur dropping very soon. So expect some more content in the coming days. Once again though, that is going to do it for today. So thank you as always for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next time.